Welcome to Mastermind Minutes, the podcast that focuses on the franchise industry. We'll cover topics that are important to franchisees as well as franchisors and share interesting insights that will help you build your business. We have one guest, we ask one question, and we do this in minutes, not hours. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Mastermind Minutes. My name's Gary Occhiogrosso. I'm the founder of Franchise Growth Solutions and the publisher of FranchiseMoneymaker.com. For those of you who are new to the podcast, the concept's pretty simple. We have one guest, we have one question or one topic, and we get an expert answer. And we try to do this in under 30 minutes. Typically, it's 20, 25 minutes, so hence the name Mastermind Minutes. And today, my guest is Michael Jacobson, and I'm really thrilled to have him on. We had spoken a couple of weeks ago. He really is a dynamic leader, and he's behind a brand called French Florist. Now, he made a pivot from outside of the floral industry, and he can tell us about that when we start the program. But in 2019, he acquired. I don't want to use the word broke, but an almost broke or a near bankrupt flower shop from his uncle in Los Angeles. And he brought it from just about $600,000, if I remember reading that correctly, in annual sales at that time to a little over $9 million in revenue in under 5 years. So we're going to be talking about that a lot today. But his ambitions really didn't stop there. He built a robust tech platform, and that's a big part of our conversation today, and also created an operational playbook or an operations manual for those of you in the franchise business, really to handle the daily reoccurring delivery business and turning the French Florist into what many have called the Starbucks of flower shops. And this has now set the stage for a national expansion through franchising. More recently, he has been partnering with other florists to help them automate what I'm using his term, not mine, the boring stuff, and streamline their operations into a modern and using a practical approach to the floral business, really shaking up an industry that is about $19 billion. So, Michael, I am absolutely excited to have you on the program today. Thank you so much for being here.
Gary, thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's a generous introduction, and we're happy to be talking to you.
Oh, great. Thank you. And I guess before we start, because we went through a couple of things here before the program, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what the French Florist is today, and then we'll talk about like what it was and how you got it to here today, and then maybe a little bit more about your
Sure.
background, what you did before you were in the floral business.
Yeah, 100%. I'll start with French Florist. It's the most interesting conversation in the room. Happy to talk about myself, but we'll start with the good stuff. French Florist today, I think it's a great question. I think that if a lot of other flower shops, and I think we used to be this way too, a lot of folks might say, yeah, we're a flower shop, and what differentiates us? Maybe we have the best quality, maybe we have the best client experience, we have the best customer service, we have a better supply chain, whatever it might be. For us, we feel that all of those things are true, but that is super boring, super boring. Who cares about that kind of stuff, right? And I think for any good company, those types of things are table stakes. What are you doing above and beyond those things that makes your brand special? So with that said, who is French Florist? French Florist is a company that understands how powerful flowers really are. We're an American brand, but our name is French Florist. How does that make sense? The name is a pretty head-on, right, nod to the European way of living, and specifically the French and how they view flowers. I think that Americans, if I'm allowed to say, controversial statement, I think Americans don't appreciate flowers enough. And I think that Americans view flowers as an occasional purchase. We view them as a luxury. And we just don't believe that flowers are a luxury. We view flowers as a need to have, not a nice to have. Because flowers are how we know that life can be beautiful, and they represent love. They are love. And love, I'm yet to be convinced otherwise, but love is the most powerful human emotion that exists for us as in our humanity, right? And so we feel very, very lucky to be working in our industry. And we view flowers as something that everybody deserves to have the feelings that flowers bring. We think they're single-handedly the most powerful gift that somebody can give to tell that person that you love them. And I think that what kind of differentiates us is a little bit more of a softer, less tactile thing. It's that we just have such a strong root level understanding of how powerful flowers really are. And uh, when clients purchase from us, I think that they can feel that and they can trust us with their order that we're going to deliver such a profound experience that no other company is able to provide right now. We wouldn't be doing what we're doing if we think the marketplace already has a player doing that. But when I came into the business at this point 6 years ago, that's what interested me. It wasn't necessarily the bankrupt flower shop, although I don't know how you could say buying a bankrupt flower shop is an enticing endeavor, but it really was the systemic issue that all florists were facing, and then ultimately that bleeds into the consumer marketplace where the way that I think Americans don't appreciate flowers, and I don't think it's their fault. I think it's the industry's fault for showing up in a highly transactional way, in a way that promotes, occasional purchases. But again, I would argue like if you're purchasing for Mother's Day, flowers versus buying flowers for your mother just because, I think the flowers just because are probably going to be more impactful for her. So I think we're trying to kind of reframe um, the way that folks view flowers in the country, and that's our mission, that's our why. And along the journey here, we've been able to kind of do a lot of innovation to help us not provide a 5 or a 10 or 15% improvement on the client experience, but like an order of magnitude better client experience. So that's what it's all about. That's what we're about.
It's amazing. So you struck a couple chords with me. First of all, I love flowers. I
Excellent.
appreciate them. I have a garden with different kinds of flowers. I cut them. I bring them in the house when it's off season. I buy flowers all the time. Like when I go to this, I'll go to like Trader Joe's and I'll buy flowers. And sometimes my wife will be like, "What are you, if you're bringing in the flowers from outside, they got ants or something, whatever." I don't care. I love having fresh cut
Fantastic.
flowers around. I mean, I just think it's like it's not about a statement. It's just about, I don't know. It just brings something to the room. I do it all the time. So
It's
I hear
remarkable.
you. I hear you about that. It's interesting. You talk about in the restaurant business, which I'm, very entrenched in. We talk about the occasion to use, and in quick service restaurants, you don't go there and drop $100. You have to go many times, so the restaurateur has to create an occasion for you to go, and that could be, I don't know, the spicy chicken sandwich or the new latte, schmate, whatever. Okay. I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about the mindset. People give flowers on Mother's Day, or it's for a wedding, or unfortunately for a funeral. It's not just for no reason at all. Now, again, I'm one of those people. It's for no reason at all. The reason is because I dig it, and I think what you said really makes sense because it should not be a simple transactional event. It should be you go to the grocery store and you buy your fruit and you should go get your flowers too. I mean, that's kind of my head. So I just wanted to let you know that you definitely struck a chord. But let's kind of get into sort of the questions. So when you were talking about, buying the bankrupt flower shop, I kind of envisioned this maybe beautiful old mansion that fell in disrepair and it was there for a long time and it was the pride of the neighborhood. And along comes you, and you walk in the front door and you fall in love and you now have to figure out, how do I make this work? How do I sort of bootstrap a legacy business? What's good about it? What's bad about it? What does it need? So can you talk a little bit about what was your first impression and sort of, I hate to say what was your first 90 days, but you know what I'm saying? Like what was your
Yeah.
first order of business here?
Yeah, 100%. I wish I had a super romantic story. I think that maybe in hindsight we could try to finagle a romantic story out of it ultimately, but it didn't start out with inheriting this like old mansion that fell apart that just needed some tender loving care. It was although it was a business that had you know what I will tell you, Gary, is like florists are just incredible people. They really are, all of them. I've yet to meet a florist that's not a great person. They wear their heart on their sleeves. They're doing it for the passion. They're working their tails off, to say the least, and they're not making money doing it.
No,
Uh,
I'm
historically,
going to interrupt you and tell you I know that firsthand because one of my franchisor clients who has a cookie business, cookie and ice cream business, he's a florist and he's the third largest distributor for 1-800 Flowers, and he's a
yep,
very unique individual.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I, I'm sure he is. Like with 100% certainty, I'm sure he's just a great person.
Great. He is.
The florists, they understand, flowers and the power behind them. Um, the when I came into, so I got a call from my uncle. He said he wanted to sell his shop. I was working a right out of college. I think a lot of folks listening, I'm sure, have that fire in their belly to do something entrepreneurial, right? I had that. I didn't, you hear the statistics on um, how frequently and startups fail. So right out of college, I took a job in corporate consulting because I could go anywhere from there, right? Had the privilege of working with really large companies, like Boeing and Nike and just big kind of Pacific Northwest brands. It was based up there. And uh, uh, I learned that maybe it was just where I was placed. The consultants, whatever that even means, what do consultants even do? But we were placed in like wherever they were facing the largest problems that they didn't know how to fix. I saw very quickly that even the largest, greatest, quote unquote, corporations out there were not run how you might think they're run. On the outside, they look really pretty and souped up, but on the inside, it's not always as pretty as you might expect. And so, I was like, wow, this is basically just a giant startup with a ton of bureaucracy. Um, and like I can do the tiny startup, I can't do the bureaucracy. So, I was at the consulting firm for about a year. I had my ear to the ground for, new opportunities, something that fed that fire in my belly a little more. Serendipitously, yeah, I got a call from my uncle. He called and said, I want to sell my flower shop. I studied finance and so I'm sure I wasn't his first call, but he maybe um was maybe fourth or fifth down the list and gone through his deck and no other business brokers wanted to help him sell his business. It just wasn't worth a whole lot, I suppose. And but he called and I said, yeah, his family, I'm more than happy to help him sell. Came into the business, worked with him kind of off and on for about 30, 45 days. And uh, that was the original intent to come in and help him sell the business. There was no intent to take it over. I didn't know much about flowers. So that was kind of that's the non-romantic story. From there, though, I started to do due diligence on the industry. It's a wildly fragmented space. Um, we don't like to compare our brand to Starbucks for a lot of different reasons, but kind of for lack of a better analogy, the floral industry hasn't even had the Starbucks effect uh, in floral. It's still single unit, mom and pop owner operator, thousands and thousands, like 99% of flower shops out there are they just own one unit, right? And so there hasn't been this consolidation, and uh, I'm, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not pro huge bureaucratic corporation. We don't want consolidation and necessarily like private equity roll up and that kind of stuff for our industry. I think that there's a really nice aspect of it that it is local. And that's why we've chosen franchising. We're doing it in a little bit of a unique way as well. But we keep that ownership local, and it might be under a cohesive brand that clients have a better experience with, but it stays local. And so, but yeah, when I came into the industry, I started to do due diligence on what other flower shops are doing well, what they're not doing well, and it really was incredibly apparent very, very quickly. Every single florist is struggling with the same exact issue, or very, very similar issues. There is a huge systemic issue in the floral industry. It's very antiquated. There's no technology. The supply chain sucks. The dominant market players out there, like folks like 1-800 Flowers, are making these florists dependent on them for orders. The problem, they take an order, they syndicate it to a local florist, they take a 30 to 40% commission out of it. So financially, they're destroying these florists. Um, and uh, um, and then there's no cohesive uh, flower shop that's providing like just a really consistent, reliable brand experience as well. So I asked my uncle. He looked at me a little bit funny, but after a couple of months, I started to understand how special flowers are, started to understand the systemic issues, and asked him if I could purchase the business. And yeah, we worked out a deal, and that was in 2019. It took me about 2 years to pay him for the business. I was out of college, didn't have a ton of money, so I officially took over kind of full ownership of the business in 2021. We got to we started out with 600,000 in revenue, but over half of that was from the wire services. Which is like 1-800-Flowers, Teleflora, FTD, that take huge commissions. So we cut that revenue basically in half. And then from there, we started working on tech, marketing, supply chain, all of the what we call the boring stuff. And we just really did it with that North Star in mind that we're not investing in tech to invest in tech. We're not a tech company. Um, we're not investing in, brand and marketing for vanity reasons. We're not investing in supply chain to necessarily just like lower the costs and keep the profit. It's all of those things serve this North Star mission of how can we create a better client experience because that's what the marketplace could and should be, and that's what the marketplace deserves. So it's just been like ruthless decision after decision and like, does this serve the marketplace better? If it does, we do it. If it doesn't, we don't. And over the past 5 or 6 years of kind of operating by those values and principles, uh, we've been able to make a series of decisions that have allowed us to, go from that 300 to 600K in revenue to north of 10 million out of one location. And then we've, expanded to more locations. Once we really dialed in our systems, we said, hey, this is something that other owners could come in and we could empower, other folks. Our whole thing is, I happen to be sitting here. I'm the face of the company. I have the privilege of that. But the reality is we have a massive, remarkably talented team behind us. And I've just learned pretty quickly that 1 plus 1 is greater than two. And we feel that way about franchising also. If we partner with the right franchise owner and we put our heads together, we're going to create a pretty remarkable system together. So it's hopefully that helps on where we were, where we are today, and now it's franchising looking forward.
No, it truly does. It's actually an amazing story, but if you break it down into little pieces, parts, it's sort of common in a turnaround
Mm,
scenario where you are, and obviously it has to do with the space itself. So you're in a space that is very fragmented. So you're not going up against an 800-pound gorilla, so to speak.
that's
If
right.
you
Yeah.
if you launched a hamburger business today, that would be a
Yeah.
different answer. But
Yeah.
but when you see a fragmented space and you look at the cumulative of business that's out there, and then you connect that to the fact that it's being run in a entrepreneurial mom and pop way, and if certain best practices were brought to it, there's a lot of money being left on the table.
There is.
And I think that that's an important thing. So when you started this process and you talked about creating repeatable systems and operational systems,
Yeah.
what are you talking about in particular? I can only ask because
Yeah.
I worked in a florist for
Yep.
one day. For one day, a friend of mine in a local florist, the guy's name was George, I'll never forget. I
Huh?
worked there. Actually, I shouldn't even say one day. It was one overnight, and it was the day before Valentine's Day.
Unbelievable, huh?
And I sat in a cooler shucking gladiolas or something. I don't even remember. I was like
Yep.
16. And I
Yep.
remember this guy, George, worked his ass
Yep.
off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the interesting thing that struck me about it, because my family was in the Italian pastry business,
Huh?
what struck me in the connection was this guy makes almost all of his money on this day.
Sure.
And he needs to be on his game on this day. That's how it was in the Italian pastry business. It was like Christmas and Thanksgiving, and that was it. If you blew those days, go home. Um, and I thought I was a kid, but in hindsight, I thought, well, he could have had a better system. He just seemed to be like all over the place. There were bits and pieces of paper with orders, and he would ask me to drive the truck that day and drop flowers off at the funeral parlor. I didn't even know how to drive a van. Like, but it was like by the seat of his pants, I guess is what I'm going on.
Yeah.
So what was it where you took the seat of your pants kind of an operation and now said, okay, here's the SOP. Here's how we do it around here. We do it this way every time, the same way until we come up with a better way of doing it. How did that go? That's a big bridge.
No, I mean, that's a literally exactly how we approached it is, I think that uh, we always look at it as what's our biggest pain point, and we solve for actual pain. We don't try to automate something to automate something. We are unbelievably, unbelievably tech enabled. We have built the best floral technology operating system that exists in the world. We've had a lot of folks come to us that want us to sell the tech, become a tech company. That's not part of our North Star. We will never describe ourselves as a tech company, though. We aren't. We're certainly tech enabled, but we don't we don't build tech to be a tech company. We build tech to solve our floral pain points. Um, so I'll give you an example. I'll give you one of the first technology innovations that we did way back, and then I'll give you one that we've just completed this, past year. Um, we were using printers like crazy. We had 6 printers. Some of them had fax capabilities. I mean, this is 2019, and we were using fax machines regularly in the shop. The reason was because an order would come in, it would print out a physical ticket with perforated edges. You'd kind of rip the card message off. The customer service rep would have to flip over that card, take the image of what the designer needed to make, um, put it onto a Word document, reprint the image of what the designer was going to make on the back, and give it to the designer. The designer starts to make it. Obviously, we're working in a flower shop. There's water and with paper, and things get wet, and then you put the paper card on and it goes into the cooler where it's humid, and it's just like, oh man, and especially on a day like Valentine's Day, imagine thousands of pieces of paper flying around, like a couple pieces of paper getting, but guess what? Every piece of paper is an order, and if one piece of paper gets lost, like we understand how special it is when somebody's sending flowers. Like that's not okay to us if we lose an order, right? Was just talking to a veteran Marine who's interested in joining the franchise program. We were just kind of uh, discussing life a little bit, and he was telling me about how he was deployed. We have wars going on. Of friends that are in the emergency room, becoming doctors. Here we are playing with flowers, right? Just this is an aside, but I think that our mission is we want to create a more uh, loving and compassionate world, and we want to do that through flowers. And even if we make the world 1% more loving, we view that as a worthwhile mission. So, look, even for like the single order that goes missing on Valentine's Day, like we don't want that to happen. And then from the financial kind of like tactical side, like we were spending I looked at the financials. We were spending $13,000 a year on printer ink. Okay. So papers are getting lost. The cards are getting wet, and the delivery, like the ink gets runny, and it's just a bad client experience. We're spending a ridiculous amount on printer ink. Like, why don't we just develop a really, really simple iPad application? The designers come in, they get an iPad, have all the orders on the iPad, all of the details. They print the card message is the last thing that they do, so it's super crisp when it gets delivered, and it's a beautiful experience. We can get our own custom envelopes and paper, and like just make it a really nice, like really beautiful experience. And iPads cost us $250 at the time. And so, you can buy 10 iPads and you're still way, way ahead on what you're printing on your, like, so like that was our introduction to like, let's build tech. It was solving a real world problem that like wasn't necessarily about the tech. It was about solving this issue, but we
Yeah,
solved it with tech.
yeah, yeah. I'll tell you, pain is a great motivator.
Hmm.
It's much more of a motivator than pleasure, in my opinion, anyway. But so I kind of I hear you with the paper all over the place and the printers, and I mean it just sounds like it was total madness.
Yeah.
But so when you say tech enabled, so you're not actually writing software, or maybe is that another component
We
here? Are
are.
you actually writing code and writing software that's unique to
We
your
do.
business?
Yeah, we do. We've developed a custom kind of proprietary operating system. We had 13 full-time developers working for us. We're probably $3 or $4 million deep into our investment on the software and tech side. So we're definitely a highly, tech-enabled company. We don't, again, we don't typically talk about the tech so much, but from an operating standpoint, it's one of the 3 things that keeps our edge. And in the franchise system, there's kind of like 3 value propositions that obviously, we get grilled all the time. Is like, what are you guys bringing to the table? If you're taking a 6% royalty, like, what are we getting for that? That's just obviously a super valid and important question. The technology is obviously a huge component of it. The supply chain is the other component. just a radically, huge economies of scale and the buying power that we have in the supply chain to go direct from farm, ultimately to create a better client experience with higher quality flowers, right? And then the third one is the marketing support. So both the brand and all the soft stuff, but also the really quantitative ROI, dollars in, dollars out type of demand generation marketing that we've gotten really good at too. But the tech has been huge for us. I mean, so just most recently, the most recent kind of major technology advance that we push forward with is from an inventory standpoint. We have developed every location has basically an AI integrated with it to its store. There's an AI algorithm that understands and predicts what people are going to order after 2 or 3 months of order data. It gets pretty remarkably accurate on uh, we're forecasting what people are going to order before people even order them. And then since all of the recipes and raw materials are in the system, we can forecast, we call it the flower buyer report. So people get a little freaked out that our industry is like perishables and right, but it's actually, we've made it way easier where we're not buying flowers by the seat of our pants. We have a report that spits out, okay, you're going to need 6 bunches of, uh, Ecuadorian 50 centimeter red roses. You're going to need 2 boxes of hydrangea, for this date range to this date range. And we recommend you purchase on this date for max freshness. Um, so, and, the human gets to make the decision. Obviously, sometimes tulips are in season, out of season. There's substitutions that happen. Sometimes we always upgrade. So if you want to put a beautiful pink garden rose in instead of a tulip, I don't think a client is going to complain about that. So the report really probably gets it 90, 95% of the way. And then just makes the human's job a little easier. So that's how we've automated instead of running things by the seat of our pants. Like our designers focus on designing, our customer service focus on customer service, our owners focus on creating a great customer experience and making sure their shop is running financially really well. Everybody has like kind of their area of heavy expertise, and we build technology around supporting that role really heavily.
Yeah, I could, it's interesting. Again, I mentioned earlier, my main focus in the franchising world is in the restaurant space, and we have prediction, analysis that will say, okay, based on, we'll go back, we'll trail maybe 2 years because, markets change. And this year, Dubai chocolate is like really popular, and last year, nobody heard of it. Okay. Do you have Dubai chocolate out in LA? Is it like a big deal now?
Yeah, my sister is like loves making that stuff. She made a homemade one. It was the first time
Okay.
it's
Okay.
actually pretty
I
good.
mean,
Yeah, so
two,
it's
two
worth the
years
hype.
ago, 2 years ago, no one knew what it was. 15 years
I
ago,
know.
people
Yeah.
thought kale was what they decorated underneath, the shelf in the butcher shop. So trends change. But I guess my point is, we go back and we look at that and we do a predictive analysis because, like flowers, food is perishable, and you can't if you order too little, you're screwed. If you order too much, you're
Totally.
screwed.
Yeah.
It's never ending. So I could see how that would not only remove some stress, but it would create a simplified
Yeah.
process for the franchisee. So in franchising, for me, franchising is all about simplicity of operation.
Mhm.
Yes, there has to be a value proposition. There has to be profitability. There has to be sort of, the consumer end of it. But at the end of the day, a franchisee wants to know what's the cost of entry versus the potential in revenue. And is this simple to operate? Because if there's a million moving parts, and if I have to be there every day, I don't want to buy a job. Okay, I want to buy a business that I can scale using franchising as the tool to scale, not as a Zor, but as a franchisee.
Absolutely.
So I'm eager to know what other sort of operational techniques did you, because I'm sure you have an operations manual at this point if you're
Yeah.
franchising. What other things did you see that were sort of the friction points? Did you say we got to make this go away? We'll never sell a franchise, or we got to
Yeah.
make this go away because I'm not spending 13 grand on printer ink anymore.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, you got to have a great team. You got to have a great site selection. You got to be great. Uh, you have to have great physical build out experience that's economical and unit economics makes sense. You got to have a great supply chain. You got to have a great tech background. Okay, and the list goes on. All of that stuff, nothing matters of that. None of that matters if you don't get customers in the door, or for in our case, 90, 95% of our business is digitally driven. So
Mhm.
if you're going to look at getting into a business, how do you drive revenue? Because you don't have the privilege of even like spending money on the expenditure side on building a great team and investing in the tech and whatnot. If
If
you
you
don't have
don't
any
with a
revenue,
business,
we're
right?
gotta have revenue.
Right.
So I'm focused a little bit of energy on that. I think the other kind of pillar of support that we've gotten very good at is the marketing side. There's two sides of marketing. there's the creative side and the soft side. How does the product make you feel? And that's really hard to measure ROI. We don't measure ROI on that, but we know how important it is to invest there, and we invest very heavily as well. But that's not ROI focused. And then the other half of it is performance. Um, you can drill down into performance, and there is kind of demand capture and demand gen. And so, there's different but these two big bucket things, we've gotten very good at both of those things. And performance pays for the creative, by the way. So you really have to make sure your performance marketing is like really souped up, right? So we've gotten really good at the average, just to give you some averages, the average flower shop in the country does $350,000 of revenue. Uh,
Really?
yeah, and that's sometimes even after 10 or 15 years of operating.
Wow.
Um, we've never launched a flower shop that's done, I think at this point, less than 800K in the first year. And typically we're building territories that we're optimizing to achieve between 2 to 3 million in revenue. That's what we've been able to achieve in all of our corporate locations. We're in the kind of early adopter phase of our franchise program. So I don't have a crystal ball, but like we are obviously have a very high level of conviction in what we're doing with our early franchise owner partners. But yeah, we've gotten really good at basically search engine optimization, conversion rate optimization once folks get to the website. There's an element of paid advertising, absolutely, that's important, but making sure that when you are doing paid advertising, it can be a black hole. So make sure you're doing that super, super well. And um, we can drill into it further too. There's like if you're searching on Google Ads or even ChatGPT and TikTok, the emerging search engines out there, and somebody types in flower shop near me or flower delivery Miami, flower delivery, Beverly Hills, like whatever, wherever people are searching in the country. Um, that's called demand capture. Customers are actively looking for your product, and that's really low hanging fruit. That's
Yeah.
if you can get really, really good at that. There's such high intent when people are searching for stuff like that. You want to show up number one on whatever search engine that person is looking at, and so we've gotten really good at that. And then so that's demand capture. There's demand that already exists. We're going to capture that. And then there's demand generation. So the cheap way of explaining it is think of like an Instagram ad where you didn't know that you wanted this skincare routine or you didn't know that you wanted this new protein bar. But like they're going to advertise to you, they're going to stimulate demand and inspire you to purchase from them. So that's the other half of the performance marketing side. We've gotten, very good at both of those sides and allows us to scale. But it's not just I mean that's all on the acquisition side. Like you mentioned earlier, you need to provide such a remarkable experience that you retain that customer because advertising is expensive. You may make a few bucks on that first purchase, but like you're going to make a lot more money if that customer comes back a second, a third, a fourth, and beyond time. So that retention aspect is super important. And on the brand side, I'll leave you with this because the performance side is important, but I don't want to neglect the creative. I think that if you go and buy a necklace from Tiffany's, do you know Tiffany's, the jewelry shop?
Of course I do.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. The
So,
little
uh,
blue box.
yeah.
Sometimes it's a big blue box.
So, what's remarkable about that, and I'm so happy that you mentioned that box. You can go into Tiffany's and spend $300. You can, and you're going to buy one of their more affordable items, but you can also go in and spend $30,000. They'd be more than happy to take $30,000 from you. In either one of those cases, you get the turquoise box, and that box. That's what you mentioned. You didn't mention anything else except for the
It's
box.
always
It's
the box.
and when you give that box to the recipient, whoever you're giving that to, that color is what brings the feelings that Tiffany's wants you to feel. And
Right on.
and that's a tough thing to measure. And so, we look at that. Tiffany's views, they're also in the industry of love, I suppose. They do view, diamonds are a whole industry of luxury. And that's where we kind of start to diverge, where we think everybody deserves those feelings. If you're walking into our store and all you can afford is a $20 wrap bouquet, that week or even that month, you should feel like $1 million and you should get that luxury experience, whether you're spending $20 or $2,000. Like we have clients all over the spectrum, right? And so, but it's a good example of how the power of brand and not
Oh,
to neglect that aspect as well.
I will tell you, branding is everything. I get yelled at from my wife and a lot of my friends. So I'm an Apple guy. Okay.
Yep.
So I never would even consider putting a case on my iPhone
Wow. Wow.
because this is designed to
Hmm.
feel the way it feels in your hand. And why would I mess around with that when this is what this is part of it. This is part of it. By the
Intentionally.
way,
Yeah.
Apple
Mhm.
has cool boxes too. It's very, they're very cornered. Their boxes but to me, the way this feels, it's a phone, okay? I'm sure an Android would do the same thing. But at the end of the day, the way this is feeling in my hand is
Yeah,
it's
it is.
super, super important. It's part of the brand. And being a branding guy, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree with you more. I think, when you think about how social media and digital has leveled the playing field. You could be some guy building a car in your garage, or you could be Elon Musk. And at the end of the day, your ability to get the word out is equal. Now, I'm not
Mhm.
talking about paid advertising. I'm talking about alternative channels.
Right.
Um, as long as you're putting out there, as long as your messaging is great and you're fulfilling that need and you're being consistent and you're creating a brand identity around the product, you're golden. Because it's never really just about the product. That's how I see it. It's never really about the product. Talk to me a little bit, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. But tell me a little bit about what you look for. Well, no, first, really quick question. How
Sure.
many total units do you have company and franchised? I guess I should ask that up front.
Yeah, so we have four corporate locations open only. They're big behemoth locations, though. They're very large locations. We're in the very early stages of franchising, so we only have uh, five. We're going to open a sixth in a couple weeks, but we'll call it five franchises
That's
open.
great. Listen, McDonald's started with one like everyone else. So I don't know
Yeah,
that it's only
sure.
five, it's just five at the moment. So what do
Yep,
you
yep.
look for like in a franchisee? What do they need to have a background in floral and retail? You mentioned you're dealing now with a former Marine who's interested in becoming a
Yep.
franchisee. What's the background? What do you look for character-wise?
Yeah, the beauty of our um, system right now, we do have a lot of interest coming in, which is we're lucky to be in that seat. We weren't always in that seat, right? I mean, the going from 0 to 1 is a tough thing, and we worked for a year and a half. We worked for 3.5 years to develop the operational infrastructure of the franchise program to even feel comfortable to bring this to market in a responsible way. And then after that 3.5 years, it took us a year and a half to sell our first franchise. Now we have uh, hundreds and hundreds of folks that are interested, and we've been able to have the privilege of like being really, really picky. And so I think it's a good question. We have had to sit down and have a very intentional conversation of who we look for. All of our team members will give you different responses, but I think what I tried to tell our team and what I look for personally is, if you open, I think if you open, like, say you have a magic wand and you can look into the future and you've opened one or two or three French Florist locations or whatever the ambition might be, and you're really successful, like then what? Um, you're going to feel really content and fulfilled with that. And if so, why? And if not, like, is there an ulterior motive? And I know I want to understand that because I asked that. I think if the motive is strictly financial, typically it's not going to be a good fit with
Yeah.
us. Look, like our unit economics are really solid. The financials are there; they have to be. But the financials are a means to go and achieve more. For us, the financials are a means to go and expand our North Star mission, create a more loving world more and more. So, and we can't do that without the financials. So as a for-profit company, we have to be running an incredibly financially, some heavy, uh, uh, impressive financials in order for us to take those impressive financials and, have that ammunition to put more towards spreading that mission. So, but look, we get answers all over the board. Like, I want to spend more time with the kids. I want to go have fun and vacation and live a fulfilling life. I want to start a charity. I've heard um, all of those are great reasons. We don't, there's like, it's not our place to judge like what the why is of people's lives. I just feel strongly that if it's strictly about the financials, um, it risks that owner making decisions that aren't going to optimize for the client experience, in my opinion. They're going to be optimizing for themselves. And I think well, for us as humans, I know it's true for me. I don't know how true it is for a lot of other folks, but like feels really good to have a purpose that's like bigger than you as an individual, right? And your purpose can serve you as an individual, and it should.
Yeah.
But if it reflects back into the world with something greater, that's That's cool. So we look for folks that just align with those values, principles, those kinds of things.
So I totally agree, man. You're preaching to the choir. I totally agree. I often tell our clients, and then I really do need to ask you for a last thought, but we tell our clients, I in particular, who have sometimes no filter at all. It's just a New York thing. Because I'll tell a client, I'm willing to lose you to the truth. Okay. But one of the things that I will say to folks is if you're the franchisor and you're sitting across the table and that guy, you want that guy to give you $50,000 as a franchise fee, whatever. Okay.
Yeah,
Before you do that, I need you to ask yourself, would you be willing to give him $50,000 to come into your business?
so smart.
Because if the answer
So
is no, or you hesitant, he's the wrong guy.
100%. A
Uh,
thousand percent. In that same light, I feel like I should be paying for running this company. I feel so lucky to be right doing what we're doing. I get to
exactly.
make money from it, and so like it's a dream, right? And so,
Yeah,
but
no, I
it's
agree with you. I'll also tell you when you talk about mission statement, I'm probably paraphrasing, but early on, in the early days of Starbucks, I believe their mission statement, because we do mission statement training, and sometimes
yeah,
our franchisors will confuse a mission statement with a brand position. So they end up with four paragraphs as a mission statement.
yeah,
And I remind them, paraphrased, that the early days in Starbucks, and it may still be this, their mission statement was changing the world one cup at a time.
yeah.
That was kind of the thing. Wasn't about anything else. It was about changing the world one cup at a time. And they got into fair trade coffee, and they got into environmentally correct, growers, and that whole thing. And the last thing I want to say is I appreciate the fact that you mentioned 0 to 1 because I'm a big Peter Thiel fan. I'm sure you've read the book because that's
Yeah.
0 to 1. And you're right. That is the most difficult. 0 to 1. The and can work, but the 0 to 1 is backbreaking, man. So give us a last thought on all of this.
There's so many different ways I could go. I think that I'll stay a little more philosophical, and because I think it's important to kind of look at that but I would challenge anybody who's listening to this. I've learned this through time that we say flowers are not a luxury, and I think a lot of people could view that as controversial. We could broaden that even, and if you look at art, I don't think art is a luxury. I think people view art as something that's like kind of a nice to have, not a need to have. But we need beauty in this world. We need love in this world. I think art is something that is really important. So if we go out and do something today and enjoy the art that nature offers, enjoy the art that people create, put some art out into the world, and yeah, like life is short, and like we gotta enjoy it. And I think art helps us do that a lot.
I agree. It elevates civilization. So if someone wanted to know more about French Florist and reach out and maybe learn about the brand or more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'm always a resource. Like I said, I feel like I should be paying for what I get to do. So, and I am one of the, part of the generation. If I get a text message, my like dopamine sensors hit. So, like, I love when folks reach out. Please don't hesitate. You can reach out to my email directly. It's michael@frenchflorist.com. If you did want to learn more about the franchise, you can go to frenchfloristfranchise.com. But yeah, reach out directly, and always happy to bounce ideas off, be a sounding board, point you in the right direction, whatever is needed.
Great. And we'll post those in the bio on the podcast. I don't want anyone running around trying to find a way to write that stuff down. Michael, I
Awesome.
truly appreciate. I know we've run a little bit longer than we usually do, but this has been a great conversation for a lot of reasons. First of all, because I appreciate your passion and I appreciate your energy, as
Thanks.
well as your intelligence in terms of how you view this. I would say equally important is the actual result of putting who you are into practice, simply using the florist or the flower shop as the vehicle, because maybe it's changed you somewhat, but your outlook and how you do things, that was there already. So I appreciate that. And we're going to have you back on. I want to know about the franchise. I want to know about it growing, and we'll stay in touch. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Awesome, Gary. I appreciate it a lot. Keep doing what you're doing. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.